What is going on, everybody, and welcome back. So today's video, we're going to be comparing two more for you if you're in that compact market. That's going to be the Glock 19 right here against the Hellcat Pro, which is the new offering from Springfield Armory. You may ask yourself, why am I using a Gen 3 against a brand new Hellcat Pro? Well, the reason is it's the only factory Glock 19 that I have laying around. They both come in MOS or optic ready versions, so just kind of ignore the optics. This is really going to be overall about the size, the ergonomics, the options, and all those things, because Gen 1 through 5 Glock doesn't have a ton of changes, but there are some minimal ones that we will talk throughout the video. And I know I can already hear the frantic typing on the keyboard. Glock's perfection. So I'm not here to change anybody's mind. I'm just here to try and give you the details of these so you can make a more informed decision. If Glock is your thing, roll with it and stay with it. If you're open to other things, this might be something for you to continue watching. And I will answer one question right up front off the bat, because this seems to be something that I get asked in every single video that I do. Would I trust my life to it? Absolutely 100%. I would trust my life to both of them, whether you're carrying the 19 or whether you are into the new Hellcat Pro. Quite honestly, both of these, okay, if my camera's focusing in on both of these, are gonna do exactly what you need them to do. It's gonna come down to minimal differences between the two, because I've carried both of them and I would trust both of them undoubtedly. Well, we will get into the range footage first, and then kind of talk about the main differences between the two, and then give like the three things I feel are the best about them as compared to one another. All right, rolling into that range footage. So we're gonna start with the Glock 19, which some consider to be the gold standard of compact size pistol. I'm not saying that's my standard, I'm just saying many out there would consider this to be a premier concealed carry because of the reliability, durability, all those good things that you have heard about Glock in the past. Well, that 19, it is the brick, the well-known brick that keeps on giving. This is a polymer striker-fired 15+1 capacity, compact, but can still be used for outside the waistband or even duty use out there, and it's well known throughout the world. It is largely unchanged from generations 1 through 5. There are minimal things, but overall, we can't say a lot has been done, especially in the way of a facelift for the Glock over the years. But then again, some would ask, do you really want major changes to something that is so proven? On the range, if you have used much of anything else out there, you're going to instantaneously notice there's a more aggressive grip angle to this. I think it's around 22 degrees if I'm not mistaken. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But you're going to immediately know that. You're likely going to be muzzle high if you come from something else with a less aggressive grip, say a 1911 or some M&Ps or a lot of other pistols out there that'll be less aggressive. You're gonna have to kind of lock your wrist forward, which can be a good thing. That can help you reduce and mitigate that recoil impulse. But again, it's something that's going to be immediately noticeable out there on the range. And like I said, that can help you control and mitigate that recoil impulse. It's also quite uncomfortable for many of us out there. We just don't prefer something that aggressive. When it comes to the Glock 19 out on the range, you will likely never experience a malfunction or a problem that either wasn't ammo, user induced, as long as they are well maintained and all of the services have been done on this thing. The 19, the 17, the Glock just in general has probably one of the best reputations out there in the striker fired pistol range. And there's good reason for that. They've done their homework, they've made things a certain way, and they don't change from those certain ways. At least they don't very often. Glocks are also known for a very low bore axis. If you don't know what that means, basically the center line of the barrel in there is very low to the grip, which is going to help control that recoil impulse. Although higher bore stuff can be run just as fast and just as flat if you know how to really grip the thing. But that can be a level up out on the range, because you can run Glocks super fast and super flat. Working our way down into that bang switch, also known as the trigger, the Glock is nothing to write home about. The trigger doesn't feel great, doesn't feel terrible. There's a little bit of mush, there's plenty of take up, but it's gonna go bang every single time. I don't think anyone out there that I know has ever experienced an actual issue with the Glock trigger itself. The thing just flat out works and it runs. It's just not the best feeling or the best acting trigger based on the design of how everything is working back in that Glock safety system when it comes to the trigger, the striker block interface, and then dropping off that drop safe ledge. If you don't know what all of that stuff is, I have detailed videos on how the Glock trigger system works. Feel free to check those out. Moving on to ammunition and what the Glock likes, it's gonna eat anything. I have yet to find an ammunition besides like some really terrible primered ammunition that the Glock has not just eaten alive out there on the range. Everything from self-protection plus P ammo, even lower pressure ammo, people trying to use like the lowest pressure ammo they can for competition and stuff, it eats through it all. You're not really going to find a whole lot of ammunitions that won't go through that thing and just go bang every single time, as long as it's quality ammunition. If you're buying Bubba down by the river's reloads, you could run into some problems. As far as running your drills out on the range, whether it's draws or magazine exchanges, all that good stuff, you should find it fairly easy to do this with a Glock. The controls are in decent places. I will say the magazine release could be better on Gen 2, 3, 4 through 5, which is why a lot of people change them. The triggers could be a little bit better, but ultimately you're going to be able to do everything you need to do with a pistol out there. You're not going to have problems running the slide, stop, slide release, because it's meant to be used as both. And as far as locating the magazine release, the Gen 4 and the Gen 5 are going to have a little bit more generously sized magazine release as compared to that Gen 3. I will say though that if you don't get right towards the front of the magazine release on the Gen 4 and the Gen 5, it does give kind of a flex or a mushy feeling if you kind of, activate it with your thumb more towards the rear or center to rear. And that's because they're polymer, because the magazines from Glock are polymer. You don't want to go putting a metal magazine release for the most part on a polymer magazine, because it's going to eat them up. In all, Glock is the brick, but it is the reliable brick that many of us known and carried for years out there. Or if you are newer to the market, it's likely one that's kind of been referred to you by default because of that history of durability, reliability, and being able to run pretty much any ammunition out there, from the dirty, cheap steel all the way through that good, high-pressure self-defense stuff. All right, moving on to the Cat, that new Pro. It's the larger, the bigger brother, I guess you could say, of the original Hellcat. This one gives you a little bit more grip, a little bit more slide, and a few more things that are more likable for people with bigger hands and aren't looking for a total micro compact. On the range, again, this is a striker fired pistol. It's going to be polymer frame just like the Glock. It's going to give you that 15+1 capacity, same as that 19, but you're going to get a little bit of a smaller footprint overall, a little bit of a thinner grip, a little bit of a thinner slide, a little bit less girth to it, I guess you could say, all around. It's also going to have a less aggressive grip angle by a few degrees, which is going to make a big difference if your wrists don't want to be like really locked forward like they have to be on that Glock 19. So I find personally aiming this is a lot more natural than it would be on a Glock, especially on the compact stuff, because I notice that I am more likely to be right on target with those sights rather than having to force my wrists downward because I am muzzle high. Now that's also going to be dependent on what you carry most and what you have trained most, so you've got to pay attention to that as well. The recoil control on the Hellcat Pro is just as easy as it is on that Glock 19. You have a low bore axis here. You don't have a ton of weight up on the top of that. And overall, the grip length of the 19 and the Hellcat Pro are extremely similar. So they're going to be very, very similar on how you're going to feel that slide reciprocate back and forth. I don't think there's really a standout of one over the other. It's really going to come down to how you feel with it in your hand. I will say this though, the original Hellcat with that smaller grip is a snap and turtle. It's known for being one of the snappiest subcompacts or micros, whatever you want to call it, but that is to be expected when you get a 9mm in a super small package. So it seems to be they did it just right with the Pro. And if you don't know, this thing right here, the Hellcat Pro from Springfield, is actually made by HS Product with a K, not a C. And they're out in Croatia. So they make all the XDs and the Hellcats for Springfield, and then they are imported under the Springfield name. And HS Product has a really good reputation. They've been around a long time and they make battle-proven stuff. So if you didn't know that, that's where these are actually coming from. They're not made here by Springfield in the United States, but then again, neither is Glock. And wrapping up the range section here as far as durability, reliability, I have yet to have an issue with any of the Hellcat lines that I've tried. I've got a regular Hellcat, I've got the Hellcat RDP, that's the one with the compensator and everything on it, and now I have that Hellcat Pro. I've yet to experience issues with either of them, but if you have experienced anything different on either of these, definitely let us all know in the comments, because I'm one guy and I've had a chance to test, I don't know, maybe a dozen Glock 19s and like 3 Hellcats, and there's a lot more of them out there than that. So let me know down below if you've experienced an issue and what it was, because it's something that I want to keep an eye on for long-term testing. And when you were out on the range with the Hellcat Pro running drills, maybe doing transitions, draws, everything like I did with the Glock, you're going to find it very natural. It has that less aggressive angle. It's going to be very controllable. It's got really good sights on it. It's got that high-vis front sight and that U-notch rear. So ultimately, it's a runner out there. You're not going to have any problems. The slide, stop, slide release is easily used, whether it's a empty gun reload or whether you're just working the slide that way, if that is your choice. When it comes to that magazine release, it's nice. It's in a very good spot. and it has a good texture and a good feel because it's metal, because the magazines in the Hellcats are stainless steel. So you're gonna get a little bit more of a positive feeling to it. I will say though, with how thin they have actually made the grip of the Hellcat Pro, getting that magazine up in there, it's pretty tight. So you've got to be on point and do your practice with it, whether it's out on the range or dry at home. You've got to make sure that you are right where you need to be so you don't catch the edge of the pistol grip there when you're doing those empty gun reloads. And now we get to the part where everybody wants to know those detailed specs. I did not forget about you people in this video. Here's the beloved elevator music right now. I gotta get some better elevator music for you guys. So what are our big differences here between the Hellcat Pro and the Glock 19? Because there are some that definitely stand out. Starting us off on that, the Hellcat's gonna have metal magazines and the Glock's gonna have their standard polymer mags, which I think everybody knows. And metal mags are far more expensive. I think everybody knows that as well. Glock magazines are about half the cost when it comes to comparing them to any other manufacturer's metal mags. I think most of you know that, but if you don't, prepare to pay double for a metal magazine. Number two, the Hellcat's gonna come standard with those high def front sights and that U-notch rear. Glock's kind of hit or miss. You may get night sights, you may get plastic sights, you may get metal sights. It really depends on how that one was shipped out and how it was ordered. In the Hellcat line, you're gonna get front and rear serrations. Depending on your generation of Glock, you may have to get the MOS version or the front serration version, Gen 3, Gen 4, and then Gen 5. So you kind of have got a decision to make there whether you really want and or need front serrations. For me, the more texture I can have anywhere on it, I'm definitely gonna go for it within reason. When it comes to size, the Hellcat is pretty much smaller all the way around. It's thinner, a little bit shorter. The grip really, honestly, height-wise from base pad of the magazine to top of that slide is almost exactly the same as the Glock, minus some kind of angles of the grip down there. So when it comes to that overall height, you're really, really close. When it comes to everything else, the Hellcat is definitely smaller profile-wise in every other category. The takedown process between the Hellcat and the Glock, relatively similar. One's just got a takedown lever, one just has a pull tab on it. So very, very simple there. When you talk about getting into more detail, anything other than field strip, that's where they really separate. The Hellcat Pro is far more in depth, takes far more small pieces than the Glock does, whereas most people with a punch can take the Glock apart pretty much completely. You're not gonna be able to do that with the Hellcat or the Hellcat Pro. You kind of have to know what you're doing because there are smaller parts that fit a different way. So you can mess it up or lose one of these small pins like the one that fits on the side of the slide stop slide release next to the locking block. If you lose that, you're in some trouble. And a big difference between the two, the Glock 19 has been around a lot longer and is far more proven. That doesn't mean the Hellcat Pro can't get there. All I'm saying is historically right now, the Glock 19 is probably one of the most proven and reliable pistols in the market today. And the last big difference is going to be there is an endless supply of aftermarket parts when it comes to the Glock platform. Whereas the Hellcat series, not so much. Now, there are companies out there making things like Apex as far as triggers, mag releases, all kinds of other stuff coming soon. But you are gonna be hard pressed to find a pistol that has an aftermarket following like Glock does, and there could be a reason for that. I will leave it up to you to determine. Now, to show you all the differences in the size of these in the hand, I wanted to give you a good up close top-down view of these together, so we'll check that out so you can get a good idea of in the hand and next to each other just what the size differences are. All right, we were going to take a moment and take a good up close look at the size differences between these two and also compare those trigger shoes because that's something that people seem to love to know. So taking a good look at these side by side, I know I can show you the specs, but it just makes more sense this way. You can see backplate to backplate right there. There is a noticeable difference in the slide length. Not only the slide length, but also the thickness of these things, both on the slide and in that grip as well. I know it might be a little tough to really make out, but there is a substantial difference in the size and the thickness of these overall. Now, when it comes to the grip on these, there are slight finger grooves on that Hellcat Pro, but they're very, very minimal. And that last one right there on the pistol grip really does grab and kind of keep a hold of my pinky, being that my hands are a little bit larger. So when it comes to the Glock 19, even if I'm jamming my pinky up, you can see there is just a little bit more of my pinky hanging off. That just has to do with the different style of magazines. You can see right there up in that front area, that magazine is tucked under a portion of the actual pistol grip itself. That makes a big difference in the overall feel of the pistol. Let's take a quick look at that Glock trigger right here. First, you'll see, obviously it's got that curved design. It's very, very much so forward set. So as you're reaching in there, if you try to get really low on it, your finger can slide up like that. And also that trigger shoe safety in there never goes completely flush. You know what I'm talking about? Your trigger shoe safety right here might be a little tough to see for you, but it never really goes fully flush, sticks out, and it doesn't annoy the heck out of some people's fingers. So the Hellcat Pro has a kind of similar trigger in there, just not quite arced as much as far as the design. It is again forward set, just a little bit less so, but that trigger shoe does go almost completely flush in there. So that's just an idea of how the differences in those are going to be. All right, what are the three biggest positives when it comes to both of these? When it comes to that Glock 19, it's gonna be the durability, the reliability, and the history of it. That's gotta be probably the biggest positive out there. It's just so well proven. Number two, is definitely gonna be the aftermarket following. You can pretty much get anything custom you want for that. And number three is kind of the same, but not really, and that is just the availability of parts for the Glock. Until recently, you could probably find Glock connectors and trigger parts in your grandma's attic. You could walk into just about any store and find factory Glock parts. That's been a little bit different over the past like 18 months or so, because Glock kind of cut the aftermarket out of it because they were having trouble keeping up with production. Hopefully that comes back. But that's been a huge positive. And those factory parts you can buy to keep around for spares were usually very cheap as compared to other pistols where you gotta order stuff in or you just can't get it. Now that Hellcat Pro, there are some real positives here when it comes to this thing. For me, the biggest one, ergonomics. The angles of this thing, even the texture all the way around the grip, are just light years ahead of that Glock, in my opinion. It just overall works better for my wrists, my hands, and everything. You may be completely different, but for me, that's the number one. And that second big positive about the Pro is definitely going to be the trigger. It has a far better feeling trigger than a lot of stuff out there in the striker market. Not gonna say it's the best, but the take up, the break, how smooth it is, the reset on it is far better than especially Glock style triggers. And the last big positive with that Hellcat Pro is gonna be the overall size of this. So it effectively competes with a Glock 19, a Glock 43X, a Glock 48, a SIG 365 XL, and many others in that size category because it's smaller and thinner than a 19, a little bit bigger than like a 43X, but not much. So it's just, it really competes with a lot. It's in a really weird class. And I think that's what makes it so good for what it is because it could be carried comfortably and run in so many different ways out on the range. And for the past couple of months, I've actually been EDCing the Hellcat Pro, but I've carried a Glock 43X MOS or a Glock 19 MOS or something like that for a very long time as well, and been completely happy with both of them. When it comes down to price between these two, especially when you get to the MOS models of the Gen 4, Gen 5 Glock, they're gonna be extremely similar, somewhere between that 600, 650 range, depending on where you can find it. Things are kind of all over the place right now still, so you might be able to find it a little bit cheaper, but you might pay a little bit more. So it kind of depends on your local store. And in all honesty, between the two, it's really gonna come down to small differences. You know, do you like the grip texture, overall size, ergonomics of the Hellcat a little bit more than the Glock 19, or do you trust the Glock name brand just a little bit more than the Hellcat name? So those are going to be things for you ultimately to decide out there on the range. And I am really curious to know in the comments down below what you're carrying. Are you digging the Hellcat stuff, or are you going to stick with the brick that everybody loves, the Glock 19, or something completely else? Let us all know below so somebody can tell you about more of that Glock's perfection. That is what I have for you all today. Make sure you get subbed up, and if you want to support the channel in any way, you can check out the clothing store or any of those links down below, or the Patreon. All that stuff is a huge help to the channel. And of course, all those algorithmic things like liking, sharing, commenting, all that stuff goes a long way too to help the channel growing. You get out there on the range, have some fun. Remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. I will see you all on the next one.